There are 19 canned products getting pulled from Walmart's supply commitments. Not speculation, not rumor. It's embedded in the contract calendar, confirmed through quarterly filings and earnings calls from the biggest shelf-stable food companies in the country. I dug through everything. Different corporations, different product lines, different boardrooms, and somehow every executive told the exact same story, almost word for word. That alone should tell you something. Here's what nobody standing in the grocery aisle understands yet. The thing threatening most of these products isn't a crop failure, a natural disaster, or a shipping crisis. It's the can itself, a steel tariff. That's it. And once you see how the math actually works, you'll never look at that aisle the same way again. Number 3 on this list is the one that genuinely shocks people. A brand that has been a fixture on American shelves since 1898, and the threat coming for it is something no shopper has ever once considered while reaching for it. We'll get there. This countdown starts with the products you'll notice shifting first and works its way down to the one you would never predict. By the time you finish, you'll know exactly which cans deserve space in your pantry right now, and which ones aren't worth the worry. Let's get into it. Number 19. Canned tomato paste. Starting here because tomato paste is one of those products people grab without a second thought. Small can. Costs almost nothing. Always there. Except the math behind that small can is ugly right now. Tomato paste sold in the US comes from 2 places: California's Central Valley, and increasingly, imports from Italy and China. The domestic side is dealing with persistent water allocation battles in California that have been tightening planted acreage for processing tomatoes year after year. Growers aren't expanding, they're contracting, because water is expensive and getting more political by the season. On the import side, Chinese tomato paste, which a lot of store-brand products quietly rely on, got swept up in the broader Section 301 tariff expansions, and the Italian product is facing the same EU tariff pressure hitting every other processed food from Europe. Now stack the steel problem on top. A 6-ounce can of tomato paste is almost nothing but packaging. The product inside weighs barely more than the metal around it. When steel goes up 25%, a can this small absorbs the hit harder than anything else in the aisle, per ounce of actual food delivered. Tomato paste lasts 3 years on a shelf. It goes into every sauce, every stew, every braise. Grab several. It's one of the most space-efficient items you can stockpile, and the pricing hasn't caught up yet. Number 18. Canned cream of mushroom soup. This one flies under the radar because people don't think of cream of mushroom as a standalone product. It's an ingredient. It goes into casseroles, into green bean bake, into about a dozen recipes that half of America makes on autopilot during the holidays. Campbell's dominates this category, and they flagged on their most recent earnings call that input costs across their condensed soup lines were compressing margins from multiple directions. Dairy costs for the cream component. Mushroom sourcing, which has its own supply chain quirks, since commercial mushroom production is concentrated in a handful of counties in Pennsylvania. And of course, the can. Condensed soup cans are heavy relative to their size. Dense product, thick steel. The tariff math hits them square. The real risk here isn't that cream of mushroom vanishes entirely, it's that the variety shrinks. Store brands get squeezed out first, then the name brand price moves up. And by November, when everyone suddenly needs 4 cans for Thanksgiving recipes, the shelf is thinner and the tag is higher. Buy it in the summer when nobody's thinking about casseroles. That's the window. Number 17. Canned green beans and canned corn. These two sit at the foundation of this entire story, because if the pressure reaches products this boring and this domestic, it reaches everything. Green beans and corn are grown right here: Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, New York. There's no exotic supply chain, no container ship, no foreign processor. These are about as shielded from global trade chaos as a food product can be, and they're still getting hit hard. Here's the mechanism. The Section 232 tariffs on imported steel came back at 25% on January 1, 2026. That's the number everyone saw, but what almost nobody caught is what happened next. The Can Manufacturers Institute reported in February 2026 that domestic steel producers raised their own prices in response. Why wouldn't they? If your foreign competitor suddenly has to charge $125, you're not going to keep selling at $100. You'd be leaving money on the table. So domestic steel went up right alongside the imports. There is no cheap option left. Imported steel costs more. Domestic steel costs more because of it. Done. Now here's why green beans and corn feel this worse than fancier products. They're what the industry calls low value, high volume. The food inside is cheap, dirt cheap, which means the can itself represents a massive percentage of the total cost. Compare that to something like canned crab, where the product inside is worth 20 times the tin. When steel prices jump, the cheapest cans in the store absorb the biggest proportional hit. That's not obvious, but it's exactly how the economics play out. Del Monte and Green Giant operate on razor-thin margins here because shoppers know exactly what a can of corn should cost. That price awareness has kept these products pinned down for years. It's also what leaves the processors with absolutely nowhere to hide when their costs move. These cans last for years. The current prices still reflect pre-tariff can costs. That won't last. Grab extras now. Quick pause. If this is already shifting how you look at that grocery aisle, drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. It takes 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps this reach more families who need to see it. All right, back to it. Number 16, canned peaches. Same steel machinery, different product inside. Canned peaches are overwhelmingly domestic. Most of what sits on American shelves came out of California's Central Valley. Cling peaches, grown and processed within a handful of counties. So again, no import tariff drama on the fruit itself. But peaches carry a second problem, green beans don't. And this is where things get uncomfortable. Cling peach acreage in California has been declining for over 2 decades. Growers have been ripping out peach trees and planting almonds, pistachios, and wine grapes instead, crops that deliver better returns per acre, and critically, need less labor at harvest time. This isn't a news story, it's a slow-motion structural decline. But it means the entire category walked into this tariff cycle with an already fragile production base. There's no spare capacity, no buffer, no slack. Stack a 25% steel cost increase on top of a shrinking grower base, in a state where water allocation is a permanent political war, and you've got a product running on fumes. Del Monte's canned fruit operations have been consolidating for years. Facilities closing, production lines shutting down. Every closure strips a little more flexibility from the system. Canned peaches last 2 to 4 years easily, and they're one of the few canned items kids will eat without a battle. Buy them while the tag still reflects last season's pack. Number 15. Canned baked beans. Baked beans sit in this strange position where they're cheap enough that nobody monitors the price, and common enough that nobody imagines them going anywhere. But they're getting squeezed from 2 directions simultaneously, and both are already in motion. Direction 1. The beans themselves. The 2025 dry bean harvest across the primary growing states, North Dakota, Michigan, Nebraska, Minnesota, landed 14% below the 5-year average. The USDA's November 2025 crop production data showed drought across the northern plains through the summer of 2025, slashing yields during what was already a low acreage planting year. Worst possible combination: bad weather on a small footprint. And the March 2026 prospective plantings report showed farmers weren't coming back for those acres. Another below-average forecast, as producers kept rotating toward commodity crops with stronger immediate returns. 2 consecutive down years isn't a hiccup, it's a pattern that takes at least 2 good harvests to reverse. Direction 2. The can. Same steel tariff story running through this entire list. And baked beans, like green beans, are a low-value product where packaging eats up a serious chunk of the final cost. Bush's Best owns this category, and Bush's is privately held. No earnings calls, no quarterly guidance. The first warning most shoppers get will be the price tag itself changing in front of them. Baked beans are one of the highest calorie per dollar items in the entire store. Buy a case. Number 14. Canned pumpkin. Here's something that genuinely startles people when they learn it. Virtually all canned pumpkin sold in America comes from one company, processing one specialized variety, grown in one concentrated region around Morton, Illinois. Not most of it. Essentially all of it. Libby's, owned by Nestle, runs the whole operation, and what's in that can isn't even the pumpkin you carve at Halloween. It's a specific tan-skinned squash bred exclusively for canning, grown under contract on farmland within trucking distance of a single facility. Think about what that means for risk. There's no backup region, no alternate supplier. If that growing area gets hammered by too much rain at planting or a wet fall that keeps equipment out of the fields, there is no pivot. The entire national supply of a product that half the country panic buys in October and November funnels through one geographic choke point. This has already happened before. There have been years where canned pumpkin actually ran short on shelves. Not because of a tariff or a trade dispute, because it rained too much in Illinois. Layer the steel cost increase on top of that structural fragility, and you've got a category with zero margin for error. Canned pumpkin also has an unusual demand pattern that makes everything worse. It spikes violently during a 6-week window, Processors have to guess months in advance about a harvest that hasn't happened yet. Guess wrong, and shelves go bare in November. Here's the play. Canned pumpkin stores for 2 years or more. The summer price has absolutely no idea what October is going to look like. Buy it now, out of season, at the boring price nobody's paying attention to. This is the most obvious arbitrage on this entire list, and almost nobody takes it. Number 13. Canned Vienna sausage. Vienna sausage is a punchline for a lot of people. Smallest can in the aisle. Cheapest canned meat you can find. There's a cultural assumption that it barely qualifies as food. That assumption is exactly why it's been underpriced for years, and it's exactly what's about to get corrected. It's primarily a pork product. The USDA reported in January 2026 that U.S. hog inventory had dropped 2.1% year-over-year, continuing a contraction that's been building since 2023. Herds don't rebuild on a corporate timeline. Biology doesn't care about quarterly earnings. A sow's gestation period is fixed. When producers exit, that capacity disappears for years. Now here's the nasty part specific to Vienna sausage. That tiny can has arguably the worst can-to-product ratio in the entire store. You're buying an enormous amount of steel relative to a very small amount of food. A 25% steel tariff hits this product harder per calorie than almost anything else on the shelf. Cheap pork going up, expensive can going up, and a product category with zero premium pricing room because the entire selling point is that it's the cheapest protein available. When a product's whole identity is built on being cheap and its costs rise, only two things happen. The price breaks its own identity, or the product quietly disappears from the shelf. Retailers usually pick the second option. Stock it while it's still treated like a joke. Real quick, if you're still here and this is useful, smash that like button, drop a comment, and hit subscribe. Every single one helps push this out to more people. Back to the list. Number 12. Canned anchovies. Nobody wants to see anchovies on a list like this because nobody thinks they eat them. But you do. They're hiding in your Caesar dressing. They're dissolved into your Worcestershire sauce. They're the invisible ingredient that makes a good pasta sauce taste like it's simmered for hours. The anchovy is the most consumed fish that almost nobody admits to using, and it's under serious pressure from two directions. Primary sourcing comes from the Mediterranean and, increasingly, the coastal waters of Peru and Chile. The Peruvian anchoveta fishery is one of the largest single-species fisheries on the planet, and it's enormously vulnerable to El Niño conditions. Warm water pushes the fish deeper and breaks up the schools. When that happens, catch volumes don't decline gradually, they collapse. Regulators have repeatedly shut the season down mid-run to protect the stock. That's the right call for the fish population. But for an American importer, it means your supply source can simply stop with no warning. Meanwhile, the Mediterranean side is dealing with the same EU tariff structure that caught Italian tomatoes, and those small flat tins have an awful metal-to-product ratio. Steel tariff, volatile fishery, tariffed backup source, all hitting the same product. Anchovies also have no budget tier. There's no cheap version to fall back into. The whole category moves as one unit. Two fillets melted into a hot pan disappear completely and transform everything they touch. This is one of the highest leverage ingredients in cooking. The tins keep for years. Grab a few now. Number 11. Canned wild Alaskan salmon. You've walked past this one 1,000 times. Silver can. Reasonable price. Nothing about it screams urgency. That quiet assumption that it'll simply be there next trip is exactly why it belongs on this list. Wild Alaskan salmon isn't some boutique specialty product. It's one of the steadiest, most reliable proteins in the entire canned goods aisle, and it's about to become noticeably harder to find at the price you're accustomed to. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game released its April 2026 forecast, and the pink salmon projection came in at 56 million fish. That's the weakest number in over a decade, a steep drop from the previous season's run. Pink salmon matters because it's the workhorse species. It fills the overwhelming majority of cans in this category. When a harvest drops that hard, processors don't absorb the difference. They cut volume, they raise prices. And the accounts running the thinnest margins, which absolutely includes the big box retailers, are the first to see their product allocations trimmed or dropped entirely. The Bureau of Labor Statistics recorded seafood prices climbing 3.7% in the first quarter of 2026 versus the same period a year earlier. That number isn't a projection. It's already baked into the contracts suppliers are finalizing right now for the back half of the year. The decisions being made in June and July are the decisions that determine what September and October's shelf looks like. Grab 2 or 3 cans while the tag still reflects last year's harvest numbers. This category has almost no domestic substitute at a comparable price point. When it tightens, there's genuinely nowhere else for shoppers to go. Number 10. Canned chicken. Most people mentally file canned chicken under emergency food. The last resort when the fridge is bare and nothing sounds good. That mental filing is exactly why it's been undervalued for years, and it's exactly the assumption that's about to blow up. The USDA's livestock, poultry, and dairy outlook for March 2026 flagged a contraction in broiler production capacity. Two forces driving it: feed costs that refuse to ease, and flocks still recovering from the avian influenza outbreaks that ripped through commercial operations across 15 states in 2024 and 2025. Feed corn and soybean meal both stayed elevated through Q1 2026. Processors have been grinding on compressed margins for a year and a half with nothing on the input side suggesting relief. Conagra Brands, which makes the Swanson canned chicken line, confirmed this on their February 2026 earnings call. Poultry input cost pressure was not expected to ease before the second half of the year. Meanwhile, demand for shelf-stable protein is running hotter than anyone forecast. Consumer pantry stocking behavior shifted in late 2025 and hasn't shifted back. Costs climbing, supply contracting, demand accelerating, all at the same time. That's the textbook setup that triggers variety reduction at a major retailer. Margins compress, demand runs hot, and the first casualty is selection. Fewer brands on the shelf. Then the price moves up on whatever survived. Canned chicken goes into everything: pasta, salads, soups, casseroles, sandwiches. That versatility is why it vanishes first when households start restocking. Buy a case while the market still treats it like an afterthought. We're deep into this now. If you've made it this far, you clearly care about being ahead of the curve. Like, comment, subscribe. It takes a second, and it keeps this content coming. Let's keep going. Number 9. Canned Italian tomatoes. Here's something a surprising number of people have never considered. Most of the crushed tomatoes, the whole peeled, the San Marzanos sitting on American store shelves, they're not from California, they're from Italy. And Italian canned tomatoes are now caught inside a tariff structure that has made nearly everything coming from the European Union meaningfully more expensive than it was a year ago. The Section 301 tariffs, previously applied selectively to EU goods, were broadened in January 2026. The Office of the U.S. Trade Representative confirmed an effective rate increase covering processed tomato products from Italy and other EU member states, going live February 1, 2026. Importers absorbed the initial wave through the spring, as they typically do. But the second wave, the actual price correction written into retail contracts, is landing right now in the second quarter. Walmart's cost from its importers is already materially above what the shelf tag currently shows. That gap doesn't survive. It never does. Importers and retailers are both operating on margins too thin to eat the difference. The consumer absorbs it at the shelf. That's how it has played out every single time. Walmart has been in extended renegotiation with multiple Italian tomato suppliers since the tariff announcement. September 1st is when several of those protected pricing periods expire. The domestic alternatives will remain cheaper. That's not changing. But if you want the imports, the real Italian product, the window is shrinking fast. Number 8. Canned sardines and mackerel. Nobody gets excited about sardines. Walk through any grocery store and count how many hands actually reach for them versus how many people walk right past. The ratio is brutal. But the people who do buy them understand something the rest of the aisle hasn't figured out yet. North Atlantic mackerel and sardine fisheries operate under multilateral agreements between the US, Canada, the EU, and Norway. In February 2026, Norway unilaterally increased its mackerel quota claim by 18% above the level established under the 2025 framework, pointing to updated stock assessments. The EU filed formal protests in March. For American importers, that doesn't translate to an immediate shortage. It translates to uncertainty. And uncertainty about supply consistency from your primary sourcing region means tighter forward purchasing and thinner variety on any shelf that depends on imports. Meanwhile, tariffs on processed fish from Asian suppliers, the backup sourcing region, have pushed landed costs up between 22% and 31% year over year, depending on country of origin. When your main source and your backup source both get more expensive at the same time, variety is the first thing that gets cut. The specialty formats disappear first: flavored tins, wood-smoked, premium olive oil packs. Then the basics get repriced upward, once all that displaced demand has nowhere else to go. Walmart's seafood buyer has fewer suppliers to work with right now than at any point in the last 5 years. Stock the basics before displaced demand narrows your choices even further. Number 7. Canned evaporated milk. This is the one that genuinely catches people off guard. Evaporated milk looks like the most indestructible product in the store. It's been on American shelves in essentially the same form since the 1880s. It costs almost nothing. It's everywhere, except it's made from dairy. And the U.S. dairy supply chain in the first half of 2026 is getting hit from 3 angles simultaneously. The USDA's February 2026 dairy products report showed whole milk powder inventories at their lowest point since 2019. Fluid milk production in the top 3 dairy states, California, Wisconsin, and Idaho, came in below seasonal expectations in Q1 2026. Herd health issues, plus the lingering aftermath of the 2025 drought, which gutted forage crop yields across the Mountain West. Then there's the can. Steel and aluminum costs remain elevated following the reinstated Section 232 tariffs, 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum. And evaporated milk is uniquely exposed because it's a cheap product in a heavy can. The packaging represents a disproportionate share of total cost per unit. When the can gets more expensive, the cheapest products in the aisle feel it the most. That rule keeps showing up on this list because it keeps being true. Evaporated milk lasts 2 full years at room temperature. That shelf life is exactly why the current pricing window matters. Pick up 4 to 6 cans. The price right now still reflects last year's input costs. By the fourth quarter, it won't. Number 6. Canned coconut milk. Coconut milk has quietly become a staple in a massive number of American kitchens over the past decade. Curries, soups, coffee, baking, every dairy-free recipe under the sun. It went from specialty to standard without most people even noticing. And it's almost entirely an import product, sourced overwhelmingly from Thailand. That should immediately raise a red flag given what's happening to Thai goods. Section 301 tariffs on Thai processed food categories were increased effective March 1, 2026. The same expanded schedule that caught Thai canned tuna swept up adjacent processed categories in its scope. Thailand isn't just a source for canned coconut milk on the American market. It is the source. Chow Ko, Aroy D, Thai Kitchen. Different labels, same country, often the same handful of processing facilities. There is no meaningful domestic alternative. You cannot grow coconuts in the continental United States at commercial scale. When Thailand gets more expensive, the entire American shelf gets more expensive. That's it. That's the whole equation. There's a secondary pressure worth flagging. Coconut production across Southeast Asia has been grappling with aging tree stock. A significant share of producing palms have passed peak yield years, and replanting is painfully slow. A new coconut palm takes 6 to 8 years to produce commercially. That's a supply base that physically cannot respond quickly to rising demand, even when the economics justify it. Canned coconut milk stores for 2 years easily. Buy several across different brands. This category has no escape valve whatsoever. All right, we're getting into the serious part of this list now. If any of this is landing, take 1 second. Like, comment, subscribe. That's all I ask. It makes a real difference. Let's finish this. Number 5. Canned pineapple. Pineapple runs almost the identical playbook as coconut milk, just from a different corner of Southeast Asia. The dominant sourcing region for canned pineapple sold in the U.S. is the Philippines, with additional volume from Thailand and Indonesia. Dole and Del Monte both operate massive Philippine processing operations and have for generations. Same structural vulnerability. No domestic alternative at scale. Hawaiian pineapple production, which once supplied the entire American market, collapsed decades ago when processing moved offshore for labor cost reasons. Those plantations are gone. Those canneries are gone. It's not coming back. So the entire American canned pineapple supply rides on Southeast Asian imports, and those imports are now inside the same expanded Section 301 tariff structure that hit Thai seafood and processed foods in early 2026. Then there's the can. Pineapple is packed in juice or heavy syrup, a dense, liquid-heavy product in a steel container. High shipping weight, high packaging cost. It gets hammered by the 25% steel tariff and by freight economics at the same time. And here's the factor almost nobody discusses. The Philippines sits directly in the typhoon belt. Pineapple is a long-cycle crop, roughly 18 to 24 months from planting to harvest. A catastrophic storm season doesn't just wipe out the current harvest, it destroys the next one too, because the plants that would have produced it are gone. The replacement cycle is measured in years, not months. Disruptions in this supply chain don't clear quickly. They linger. Stock up while the pre-tariff inventory is still sitting on shelves. Number 4. Canned chili. Walk into any Walmart, and there's an entire section dedicated to canned chili. Hormel, Wolf brand, store label, several others. It looks like permanent abundance. It isn't. Hormel Foods reported on its Q1 fiscal 2026 earnings call that it was dealing with margin compression across its shelf-stable segment, driven by pork input costs running above prior year levels. U.S. hog inventory declined 2.1% year-over-year as of January 2026, continuing a contraction that's been building since 2023. Pork is the primary protein in most canned chili formulations, and that trend isn't reversing anytime soon. Herd rebuilding takes years. Simultaneously, the bean side has its own problem. The USDA's March 2026 prospective plantings report showed dry bean acreage in the northern plains, the primary domestic growing region, expected to fall 6% versus the prior year, as farmers rotated toward crops with better near-term margins. A 6% acreage reduction doesn't create an overnight shortage. What it creates is tightness. And tightness in a category that's already absorbing cost pressure from another direction is exactly the condition that triggers contract renegotiation at the retail level. That's the pattern threading through this entire list. It's rarely one catastrophic event. It's two or three moderate pressures landing in the same quarter, in the same product, and compounding on each other. Canned chili is one of the very few genuinely complete single-can meals in the store. Buy several across different brands before the contract math catches up to the shelf tag. Number 3. Canned soup. Campbell's is one of the most recognizable brands in American grocery history. It's been on shelves in essentially the same form since 1898. It feels permanent, untouchable. Soup is soup. Soup has always been there. Campbell's Soup Company reported on its Q2 fiscal 2026 earnings call in March 2026 that it was managing sustained input cost pressure across three separate fronts simultaneously: protein costs, vegetable commodity costs, steel packaging costs. Three at once. The Section 232 tariffs reinstated at 25% on imported steel hit the can manufacturing costs Campbell's absorbs on every single unit it ships, every can, every variety, every truckload. And here's the part almost nobody factors in. Domestic steel producers raise their prices right alongside the import increase, because why wouldn't they? If foreign steel is forced to $125, domestic producers aren't going to stay at $100 out of the goodness of their hearts. So the cost increase is double-sided. Imported steel costs more. Domestic steel costs more in response. There is no cheaper alternative left anywhere. Campbell's doesn't absorb that forever. No publicly traded company does. They pass it through in price increases, negotiated at the next contract renewal. That mechanism is completely predictable, and it's already in motion. A can of chicken noodle opened on a cold morning. The steam, the salt, the starch. That's wired so deeply into American life that when the price increase lands, it's going to feel almost personal. It's not personal. It's a steel tariff, a wheat cost, and a protein input, all converging on the same product in the same quarter. Number 2. Canned tuna. Canned tuna is the single most consumed canned seafood product in the United States, and the supply chain behind it is more fragile than almost anyone realizes. The vast majority of canned tuna consumed in America is processed in Thailand. Star-kissed, bumblebee, chicken of the sea. The labels say different things, but the fish largely flows through the same Southeast Asian processing infrastructure. Thailand's tuna canning industry is enormous, and it is now sitting squarely inside the expanded Section 301 tariff structure that went into effect in early 2026. Landed costs for Thai-processed tuna have climbed substantially. Importers held the line through the first quarter by burning through pre-tariff inventory, but that buffer is running thin. The repricing is coming to shelves in the second half of the year. Beyond tariffs, there's a biological reality at play. Skipjack tuna, which accounts for the majority of canned product, depends on healthy ocean conditions across the western and central Pacific. Fishing quotas are set by regional management organizations, and those quotas have been tightening, not loosening, as sustainability pressures mount. Processors can't simply increase catch volume to offset higher costs. The fish aren't cooperating, and the regulators aren't either. Canned tuna is also a product where the can matters. It's a flat, wide format, a lot of steel per unit of food. The tariff math is punishing. This is a product that millions of American households use weekly. It goes into sandwiches, salads, casseroles, pasta, and the pricing has been artificially stable for months because retailers have been eating the gap. That ends when contract renewals force the correction through. Stock up. Tuna lasts for years. The price you're paying today is not the price you'll see by November. Number 1. Canned corned beef. This is the one at the bottom of the list, because it's the one almost nobody would ever think to worry about, and it's the one with the most lopsided risk profile of anything here. Canned corned beef sold in the United States is almost entirely imported. Brazil and Argentina are the dominant sources, with additional volume from Uruguay and Paraguay. Domestic production of canned corned beef at commercial scale is effectively non-existent. The processing infrastructure simply doesn't exist here for this product in this format. That means every single can on the shelf arrived on a container ship from South America. And those imports are now navigating a tariff environment, freight cost environment, and currency environment that have all moved against the American buyers simultaneously. Brazilian beef exports have been subject to periodic trade restrictions and tariff adjustments for years, but the current environment has layered additional costs through the broader agricultural import tariff framework. Meanwhile, global beef prices are elevated because drought conditions across multiple major producing regions, including parts of Brazil itself, have constrained herd growth. Then there's the can. Corned beef comes in a distinctive trapezoidal tin that uses more steel per unit than a standard cylindrical can. That unique shape is part of the product's identity, and it's also an engineering liability when steel prices spike. More surface area, more metal, more cost. The product has a fiercely loyal but relatively small consumer base, which means retailers have less incentive to fight for shelf space on behalf of a slow-moving SKU when margins get squeezed. It's exactly the kind of product that gets quietly delisted during a cost cycle like this one. Canned corned beef lasts for years. It's a complete protein. It requires zero preparation, and it is more import-dependent than any other canned meat product on the American shelf. If there's one item on this list where the supply math is most precarious relative to how little attention it gets, this is it. Buy it while it's still sitting there looking like it always will be. That's the full list. 19 products, same forces, same quarter. If this helped you think differently about what's happening in that aisle, the best thing you can do is like this. Drop a comment with which item surprised you most, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. I read every single comment. See you on the next one.